you to be here today. I want to remember you that the current session will be TLP-wide. And to present the session name, don't blame the user, stop the fish before it's even sent. Let me to introduce Wout Debaenst. Thank you.
Thank you. So, hello everyone. Welcome to this talk in which I will be talking about how we can actually avoid having to blame the user and stop the fish before it is even sent. Well, before we dive fully into it, I think it can be useful to get to know who I am. I am Wout Debaenst, and actually the founder of Compound C. Compound C is just a company that is still in the build-up phase, so you won't find it anywhere on the internet yet. It's quite new. Because I recently stopped from 2 years working at NVISO as a red team operator. And after that, I also worked as a penetration tester. Before that, I worked as a penetration tester at EY. And like, if there's one thing that you guys should remember about me, is that I'm on the offensive side. Like, I like to be the hacker itself. And I'm going to explain you guys today actually how to make my job a lot harder. And it's a bit ironical, but it will make me harder. It will make the job for me harder. And I'm going to do that I'm going to explain it in different scenarios. And I will guide you through the whole phase of how I set up phishing campaigns and how at each phase you could actually start blocking me. And I will first show you how I set up a campaign. So before I'm sending it, how I set up the infrastructure, etc. How I buy the domain, how I set up more infrastructure related to it. And then how you can actually, like in the next phase, how I will be sending the campaign and how you can block me on there. Now, as this is a blue teaming conference mostly, I will be really bringing the purple approach to this. So in this slide deck, you will see two different kind of slides. First, you will see the red teaming one, and then you will see the blue teaming one. So in the red teaming one, I will explain how I do things, and in the blue teaming, how you can actually block me on that. All right, so for this presentation, I actually set up a whole demo. And I set up like a fake company called BluePerfect.net, which is like a fictitious company like selling water bottles or something similar. And the problem was that like demo gods were not very merciful on me. Yesterday, Cloudflare banned my account. So, today, like I will try to get to know, like show you most of the topics that I want to show you with the screenshots that I still have. Normally, I'm in the work of getting my account unbanned again. So all the techniques that I will show you today, you will actually be able to use them and try it out on all the domains that I will be showing you today, because they have actually been set up with the things that I'm telling you. All right. Let's first start. If I'm going on a red team activity and I want to emulate an adversary, I have kind of an idea of the scenario that I want to use. First things first, I need to have a domain that I can use for the full engagement. And this is how I will be choosing a domain. If I want to target BluePerfect.net as a domain, or like as a company, there are different techniques that I can actually use to choose a very good domain. There are different like fancy namings for like altering the original domain. One is typo squatting, combo squatting, and doppelganger domaining. And all of these could potentially be fake ones. I really like the typo squatting ones because those like are very hard to see with the eye what actually is wrong with them. Like a quick tip, like none of these are is the actual one. They're all like fake. And like that's a really good one. So also I use combo squatting, in which I will be using like just the regular domain, but add something in front of it. For example, BluePerfectEurope.net. It's a domain that I can fully use, and it still seems like very legit for an end user inspecting the URL, which they're always told to do, right? And then we also have doppelganger domaining, in which like I will see what the different subdomains are of the different, or like the legit subdomains of BluePerfect.net. And then I will just paste them together in, for example, Jira BluePerfect.net. And this is how I will actually start buying my domain. Now, this is only like a first step, and probably some of you already know that these can actually like be very hard on me, and you can detect that very early on. And there are several tools that actually detect like different domains being registered, and that will alert you if a domain that might be suspicious specifically for your company, that you will get an alert. Here in this slide, I actually put an example of DNS Twister, which is an open source software. And you can just go to dnstwister.report, I think it is. And there you can type in your domain and then see, you will get a list of all the domains that have been like altered in some kind of form and that have been registered. And if you go to the second tab, like to the available tab, you will see all kinds of different domains that have been altered in some way that might be used to target your environment. So it might already be a very good idea to just take a list of those domains and block them straight away, because chances of them being used for legitimate reasons are close to none. All right, and if you want to have like a more automated version of this, there are several paying tools. I listed some of them below. I don't have any experience like using any of these, so I will leave that up to you on how you can implement those. Now, as a red teamer, I kind of know that probably, like I searched through LinkedIn, I try to see if there are any job descriptions saying that your company might use any of those services shown in the last page. And I try to avoid those, by all means. I don't want to set up the whole infrastructure, send my mail to know, okay, you actually already got me at the first part where I bought a domain. And because I want to like anticipate that, I'm going to buy a domain which is completely legit, which for you does not have any reference to, for example, blueperfect.net. And an example would be registrationportal.com, would be conference2020.com, or online file share if I want to send like a malicious Excel document or something. And of course, like those can seem a bit more weird, and to add a bit more to the legitimacy, I will add a subdomain, for example, blueperfect, to make it legit for the user actually inspecting it, so that they see the domain, see it doesn't have any spelling mistakes, right? It might be legit. But that is how I do it, and you can actually already block me on that part as well. If I am registering a domain, and I am, I have set it up, you can't, so for example, I bought registrationportal.com, and you try to detect me. If I set up the SSL encryption for it, all the subdomains for which the SSL has been set will be reflected in certificate transparency logs. And since it's a very powerful tool to actually go through the certificate transparency logs and try to find names with blueperfect reflected in this. So if you would do that for blueperfect.net, you would actually find like the one at the bottom that is highlighted, and that is the blueperfect.fileportalcloud.com. And that is actually one of the malicious domains that I have bought, set up. And this might already be a very strong indicator, oh, this domain is malicious, so let's just block it straight away. All right. As an adversary, of course, I can also anticipate on you like monitoring these certificate transparency logs. And what I will do personally then, I really like to use Cloudflare, because Cloudflare really gives you the wildcard SSL certificates. So if you would go and look for your company in the certificate transparency logs, you will not see it reflected in the subdomains, because the only thing that is reflected is the wildcard certificate. So this way, I can actually use a domain that is very legit, looks very legit, but is still remaining under the radar. Now, let's say you found my domain. Like with the previous example of the wildcard certificates, I think you can already like catch maybe 50% of the red teamings out there. Like this is the wildcard certificate is something I only learned like half a year ago, and before that, like we could have been caught thousands of times on that. So it might be a very powerful technique for you to implement in your organization. But let's say I didn't do that, and you found my domain. So for example, fileportalcloud.com, you found it in the certificates. a very powerful thing to do next is to actually see how can I use this domain and pivot to other threat infrastructure out there, threat infrastructure that might be related to the initial domain that I have. And you can make use of me being a lazy ass. As a red teamer, we have to set up like a lot of domains, and we try to be efficient. And trying to be efficient also has its compromises, because I'm going to reuse servers, I'm going to reuse recategorization templates, I'm going to reuse domain names. And all those things make that, because there are some similarities between two, that you can actually nicely correlate in between. And those correlations can come from IP addresses, can go from US database, it can come from HTML hashes that you can search online, and it can come from image hashes that you also can correlate together. And in this example, I have used the graph functionality of VirusTotal. It's actually a very powerful tool to correlate different domains together. So in this slide, I have entered fileportalcloud.com, and then VirusTotal would automatically give me a lot of the different nodes correlated to it. And we can see there, we have like the IP address here of the United States. And maybe if we would double click that, VirusTotal automatically get all the related nodes from that part. And then brings us to here. And the funny thing is, like, new domains are popping up because they have once, historically, for example, been pointed to the same IP address as fileportalcloud.com has been. And this way you can actually start like correlating a lot of these different domains to each other. Now, I as an adversary, again, anticipate on that, like a bit of the cat and mouse game, right? As a red teamer, I will anticipate on that and will try to break that initial IP DNS correlation by always using a unique IP or using a unique DNS name, or try to blend in with the masses, all right? If I am, for example, in Cloudflare, you would see an IP address from Cloudflare, but there are thousands and thousands of different domains connected to that same IP address. And I basically become like a needle in the haystack, and it will be really hard for you to like weed those out. Now, don't be sad, like it's still possible to make other correlations of my domains. And that is actually by using the pages that have been in front of it and correlate those together. Now, this is the part that actually got fully broken with my Cloudflare abandoning. So here I included a screenshot from branddefense.io. They have a very good source on threat hunting these kind of phishing pages, so I definitely recommend you to check these out. All right, and what they actually do is they go and they take the hash of a phishing page that they found, like from, for example, the favicon.ico, and they will search that in a service like Shodan to see which other services are actually, which other web pages are actually showing these in the front. And this way you can actually detect more domains that might be suspicious or targeted your company. A very good idea might be to just use your own favicon, for example, from blueperfect.net, and then see if it pops up on any weird domains, which probably is very suspicious to the company. You can also do this with images, full HTML hashes in services like urlscan.io. And it's also possible if you use the business version of VirusTotal, like the intelligence version. And with that, you can also search on hashes and correlate different domains to each other. But that is paid version, and these versions are for free. All right, but like as an attacker then, I also try to anticipate that again. And like this is the part where for me as an attacker, the cost of setting up a phishing campaign against you and trying to be fully OPSEC becomes incredibly hard. If I want to avoid you correlating based on icons, on images, then I would actually have to obfuscate a full HTML file. I would have to obfuscate images. I would have to try to create like templates which have been used like thousands of times again, just to be unique and blend in with the masses again. And you can feel the cost for me setting up a complete phishing campaign is incredibly difficult. And that is what we want to get to, right? Make my life as hard as possible. Now, let's say you didn't detect my domains, right? So I had everything fully proof. I did everything OPSEC safe, so that like a correlation or just a detection of one of my domains was almost not possible. It's not too late. Like if I go and click the send button, there are still different things that you can actually do to block me on that. And one of those is reputation-based filtering. It's also one of these things that like make my life so incredibly more harder. Just the cost of making an attack against a company using reputation-based filtering is a lot higher instead than just doing a regular one. So very like these are two servers that I come often across in companies that I'm testing. And it's like, for example, Blue Coat or Talos from Cisco. And these will go and scan the internet, and then for every domain that they find, they will actually paste a reputation and a category on there. And that means that if I just set up my domain and I did everything like I should, and I send my email to you, then it will get into the reputation-based filtering, and it will see, oh, this domain is less than 30 days old. Oh, this domain is it doesn't have a category, it's unknown, so it's probably suspicious, we block it. And then again, my whole effort of setting everything up, like the whole walkthrough, done for nothing. And this can be done on different things by these vendors. It can be done on IP reputation, domain reputation, also the domain age, so also the mail server reputation, but also on content-wise. So these are a lot of different things that as a red teamer I have to take into account trying to bypass these. And if I want to like bypass these, there's again a lot more that I have to take into account. If I'm going to look and I want to get like a good IP reputation, then I will use your tools that you might use to analyze it, and I will actually see, does this IP address have a bad reputation? For example, it has been used by a different one. And if that is from a cloud vendor, I can just simply shut down my VM, get a new one, and then it will be okay. Well, if you are, if I want to do it another way and I want to get like an IP address, a high reputation IP address straight away, I can actually use Cloudflare, and Cloudflare will provide me with an IP address. There's so many requests going there that it has a high reputation, and I can just make use of that straight away. And then also, like for the domain reputation, that one is a bit harder. I actually have to buy my domain like a lot in advance. Best is like if I have it for over a year. And I need to set it up with like a fake template, for example, like a copy of the Blue Perfect site, and then try to get that domain categorized and aged on time by one of these vendors. But that can be a very troublesome process. Like I still remember, like 1 year ago, it was very easy. You just bought a domain, you let it be there, you didn't touch it, and then once you had an assessment, you would go there, you would set up your domain, and you would paste like a quick server next to it. The categorization service would paste a category in it, and once it was done, we just take the server down and start developing our Phish. Well, the last year, I cried several times. It was Blue Coat and also Talos Intelligence. They started to like monitor several times. So it would scan the first time, paste the category, but then if I would be going further and I would take down the server, they would see it and they would mark it as suspicious again, and I would not get it categorized anymore. So then I had to restart the whole process over again. So again, the cost for me getting very high. Maybe one thing that you should be like aware of is that, like a trick I really like to use a lot of the times, is that you have these top-level domains which are not actually top-level domains. For example, I could buy a domain that has like .eu.com, and a lot of these services will then look for like the top-level domain, and they would just see, okay, the top-level domain is .com. well, actually it's and then the domain is EU. So they would come and check for the age of the domain. And instead of looking at blueperfect.eu.com, they only looked at the last part. And they see, okay, the age is 26 years. And the technology, like the categorization is tech. And then as an attacker, I'm like, sweet. And so that's a trick that I really like to use. So you should also be aware of that. And another thing that we might try to do is buy expired domains. I'm not a really big fan of that because it's really hard to get an expired domain that doesn't look fishy. All the expired domains either look fishy or like don't have a category to attach to it anymore. And I will also try to aim for like financial category or military or health, because in some, not all of them, but in some best practices, it's actually stated for these deep-level packet inspections softwares that you should exclude these categories because they might contain very sensitive information. And that is, of course, like we want to be excluded as well, right? So we will try and blend in with there as well. Now, we also have the mail server reputation, and that is something I will not even try to set up my own mail server. That's just guaranteed to be landed in the spam. And for that, I just can easily use these services like SendGrid or Mailgun that have a high reputation on their own as well, and that I can just use them. And also, like just as a last one, I need to be very aware of the content. If my mails that I'm sending have like a very fishy content, a fishy feel to it, that will bring the reputation down quite drastically, and I have to start over all again because it just went straight into the spam folder. Now, there are already 3 steps that we went through. So the first one would be like you detecting me to block you detecting me buying a malicious domain. The second would be from that domain, you could pivot to other domains and then potentially like burn my whole threat infrastructure already from the first go. And then the third one is that you would detect me during the launch through reputation-based services. And let's say I was very advanced. I took a lot of time in my setup, and I could bypass all of those steps. Then it's still not too late. If you, as an attacker, could do a lot of endpoint hardening to make an execution of, for example, a maldoc document, for me, virtually impossible. If you would set up macro execution hardening, and then I'm thinking about Mark of the Web, which is now default by Microsoft, but also if you would enforce like signed macros that only signed macros can run, if you would be using AppLocker, like a good configuration in combination with exploit guard, if you would have a service that does file filtering so that not all documents can be downloaded from the internet, or if you have like a very decent EDR solution, then I can do everything like right from the setup, but in the end I will just go there and cry in a corner because like for me it's really hard to bypass all of these protections. And that is like, if you want to make it for me virtually impossible, I strongly recommend to implement these in your organization. And this is, of course, like a lot of the cat and mouse game that you've seen now from me. And I really, I wish for you to make my life as hard as possible as a red teamer, okay? And then that is really the main topic that I wanted to give to you. So don't always blame the user. There are a lot of things that we as a company can actually already do to protect our valuable users, so that it doesn't even matter if they clicked the link or not. We got them covered. All right, that's my talk. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Wout, for the nice point of view. Let me say, you say right, we never, or at least maybe not every time we have to blame the user, but let me say, in the last point you speak about the endpoint. We can prevent the endpoint if the user is inside our organization, but if it's a customer, as example for the bank, for the financial services, yes, in the first case you speak about all the cyber squatting or squatting, you can prevent it, but maybe are half of all the phishing that we receive, because half of phishing are nothing related with keyword on the domain or something, so you cannot prevent it. In that case, we have to blame the user. Maybe we have also to destroy the user device and let him to use the paper. But let me say, if someone else have some question for Wout on the stage, you have to go to the microphone, sorry. One on the left and one on the right. One is going, let's wait.
Thank you for a very interesting talk, Wout.
No problem.
I was wondering throughout the talk, you're more and more talking about defend against the red team.
Yeah.
What guarantee do you have that the techniques that you are employing are actually the ones we try to block?
That's a good point. Well, as a red team, we try to stay as close to like real attackers, of course, as possible. But real attackers can often do things that we are not allowed to do. For example, compromise a web server online. So these techniques that we try to do is like to get as close as possible. I can't give any guarantees that we are like exactly the same, but we try our best.
There is someone else for Wout? No, so Wout, thank you again for your presentation. Now we'll have a little break. Next session will be in more or less 10 minutes. Thank you, everyone.